KTLK, AM 1150, your voice. We are having a party. I'm David Cruz. We are here with you. We are looking at now the State of the Union address from last night. President Barack Obama, the first SOTU of his new term. Not exactly a barn burner. Let's be candid. Let's be on the money about it. But some say, okay, he had a reason. More assertive. A little bit more combative, a little bit more aggressive because he has to be. He's not trying to woo the other side anymore. He's basically saying, this is what I need to have done. You know, talking taxes isn't exactly, the sexiest place to begin. And I have Peter Mathews, my colleague from NBC Days, who is here with me. We also asked Dr. Art Gray to stay here from Gray's Matters Ministries because I think there's a lot to be said in this speech. What did he say? What did he not say? And how does it apply to us? Let's go first with the president talking about changing the tax code. This is touching the third rail.
The American people deserve a tax code that helps small businesses spend less time filling out complicated forms and more time expanding and hiring. A tax code that ensures billionaires with high-powered accountants can't work the system and pay a lower rate than their hard-working secretaries. A tax code that lowers incentives to move jobs overseas and lowers tax rates for businesses and manufacturers that are creating jobs right here in the United States of America. That's what tax reform can deliver.
Okay, Professor Peter Mathews, Cypress College, 30 years you've been, studying politics and its implications on our lives. I did not give the president an A+ because he wasn't going for drama. He was really going for meat and potatoes, deliver the goods, and I think he did very well on technique. Sir, your assessment.
He did well on technique, and also he was very partisan and assertive on issues that he was sure that he could actually may not get through. On the other issues that was controversial, like immigration, he didn't spend a lot of time on it. He figured there was a bipartisan approach. So he had a two-pronged attack, in a sense, and I believe on budget and taxes he was very strong. Very strong. He was clear about what he wanted.
So you're telling me that he is setting a stage to leave no question about what he expects?
That's right. Exactly. He was very specific about the taxes. Make sure we don't give tax loopholes to companies that take jobs overseas, but help those that are keeping jobs here to have tax breaks.
All right.
Very clear.
And you and I, Art, were also touching on this in the previous hour in terms of the impact of the president's remarks. Now, the president talked about the budget concerns, and I remember as he walked in, he shook hands with all the generals. You and I both know, Professor, the sequestration or the cutting, this doomsday cut to the federal budget, it can't happen. I mean, come on. Do you think the Defense Department is going to stand by for something like that, sir? I mean, he called upon Congress to work together, but it seemed more like he was saying, if you don't do something about it, I am.
Yes, he did. And in fact, if the Congress doesn't come up with the taxes that he needs and the cuts that he needs so they wouldn't be a sequester, what's going to happen is in less than 2 weeks, March 1st, there will be cuts beginning in the defense budget and also in social programs, including Head Start and programs that would help young people and people who need some help in housing, other things that were being cut back for the elderly, home health care and home services. Those things the federal government helps with are going to be starting to be cut back stage by stage. It won't happen all at once, Dave, but it'll be slowly. You're talking about $56 billion out of defense and about 40-something billion out of social programs.
Okay, so let's listen. As we hear that, and I've just heard Art speak about how some communities feel that they are really not getting what they expected, and it's because, in part, it's how it's being processed in D.C. I want to listen to Marco Rubio. I think he gave a lame response from the Republican side, but cut 12, please.
Mr. President, I still live in the same working-class neighborhood I grew up in. My neighbors aren't millionaires. They're retirees who depend on Social Security and Medicare. They're workers who have to get up early tomorrow morning and go to work to pay the bills. They're immigrants who came here because they were stuck in poverty in the countries where the government dominated the economy. The tax increases and the deficit spending you propose will hurt middle-class families. It will cost them their raises. It will cost them their benefits. It may even cost some of them their jobs. And it will hurt seniors because it does nothing to save Medicare and Social Security. So, Mr. President, I don't oppose your plans because I want to protect the rich. I oppose your plans because I want to protect my neighbors. Hardworking middle-class Americans who don't need us to come up with a plan to grow the government. They need a plan to grow the middle class.
You know, isn't it something you can look at an elephant from both ends? One sees a curly tail, the other one sees tusks. I hope you move away from that backside before something else comes out. But Professor, tell me this. How did you feel, really, America will see the State of the Union? Do they see the Marco Rubio vision, or do they see the President Barack Obama vision about making the Union stronger?
Definitely President Barack Obama's vision, because over half of them, 53%, voted for him. And frankly, Rubio needs to take a history lesson, sir. He doesn't know that taxes were cut on the wealthy back in the 1890s, the 1920s, the 1980s under Reagan at the beginning, and also the 2000 under W. Bush and what followed. Recession, Great Depression, recession, and Great Recession.
Man,
he forgot his memory.
That's why you get the big bucks. Mondo, I want you to play the President's State of the Union, where he said the state of our union is stronger tonight. Number 5.
I'm going to write that down, Professor.
After a decade of grinding war, our brave men and women in uniform are coming home. After years of grueling recession, our businesses have created over 6 million new jobs. We buy more American cars than we have in a year, and less foreign oil than we have in 20. Our housing market is healing, our stock market is rebounding, and consumers, patients, and homeowners enjoy stronger protections than ever before. So, together, we have cleared away the rubble of crisis, and we can say with renewed confidence that the state of our union is stronger.
Okay, Professor, he paints the vision, and he lays out very specific evidence of his argument. How, then, does the Republican side counter that or justify speaking out against his proposals and the vision that he has laid out, and as both of you have pointed out, which the electorate has already spoken and said, you are back in the White House?
Absolutely, and in fact, the numbers are on his side. The economy grew every quarter until the last one last year. By a small amount, it shrank. It's still back growing. Every month, over 150,000 jobs are being added. So what the president needs to do is go even stronger in his direction, and the people will support it. More investment in jobs and technology, more education funding, more funding for those who are small businesses to be able to get income to expand their businesses.
We always talk about access to capital has been choked off, Professor. I want to have your views together. Professor, your take on, can we turn this puppy around and get an infusion of money to small business? That is the pump that must be primed. Right. So your perspectives, small business needing capital, how do we turn this around?
We have to by closing the corporate tax loopholes that are not good, like President Obama proposed, closing off the loopholes that subsidize big oil companies to go overseas and drill and other things. And so bring that money in. I have to close the loopholes and bring that money in and get it to small business to hire other people.
Stand by. I'm going to take 60 seconds right now to go to Mike Nolan, who's standing by in the KTLK AM 1150.
It's important to do that.
You mentioned putting shoes on kids to let them go to school. And, Professor, I know you've been a firm advocate of higher learning. The president last night spoke about the need to reform the college cost dynamic because it's out of whack. Let's see what he says.
I asked Congress to change the Higher Education Act so that affordability and value are included in determining which colleges receive certain types of federal aid. And tomorrow, my administration will release a new college scorecard that parents and students can use to compare schools based on a simple criteria: where you can get the most bang for your educational buck. Now, to grow our middle class, our citizens have to have access to the education and training that today's jobs require. But we also have to make sure that America remains a place where everyone who's willing to work, everybody who's willing to work hard, has the chance to get ahead. Our economy is stronger when we harness the talents and ingenuity of striving, hopeful immigrants. And right now, leaders from business, labor, law enforcement, faith communities, they all agree that the time has come to pass comprehensive immigration reform. Now's the time to do it. Now's the time to get it done.
So he segues from education cost reform into immigration, but I want to come back to the issue of the cost of education. And Professor, I've been concerned about a move by Governor Brown to, in a way, accelerate people through community colleges, and I understand there is pressure because there's kids in the pipeline, but let's face it, some kids of color will have a difficult time, more so than others, adapting to even a community college environment. And let me tell you that I've seen it. Right. A lot of the kids come in, they need remediation courses because our public schools have failed them in some of the inner city areas and so forth. Nonetheless, he talked about education. And tonight, as we analyze what he said 24 hours ago, Professor, will he be remembered and looked upon as the president who truly made a breakthrough in college cost reform? Can he pull it off with the Congress he's dealing with right now?
Only if he can bring in more funds. And you're right about Governor Brown. We need to be expanding the community college funding, and you do that by closing the unfair, unneeded corporate tax loopholes at the state level as well. Bring in $14 billion a year to go back to where we were when students could come out of high school, go to community colleges, and transfer to UC and CSU and become doctors and engineers, my friend.
I'm glad you brought that up.
That was just 20 years ago.
Because you were talking about companies, massive companies, pulling out tremendous amounts of revenue from our resources, and those dollars could be earmarked specifically for education.
Absolutely. I teach at a community college, so I know firsthand. I've had some brilliant students there who've gone on to become professors and engineers and Wall Street folks, and yet nowadays it's all shut off for them, for most of them, and we got to bring that money back in, Dave, like we used to in California when the economy grew and the middle class flourished.
Go to 11, where the president echoed what you've just said, or you affirmed what he did. Invest in ideas.
Every dollar we invested to map the human genome returned $140 to our economy. Every dollar. Today, our scientists are mapping the human brain to unlock the answers to Alzheimer's. They're developing drugs to regenerate damaged organs, devising new materials to make batteries 10 times more powerful. Now is not the time to gut these job-creating investments in science and innovation. Now is the time to reach a level of research and development not seen since the height of the space race. We need to make those investments.
I hear those words and they inspire me, and then I start to hear fools speak about cuts and how we're spending recklessly. And I say, there's a difference between being a consumer society and being an investment society. Professor, the difference, how would you define it?
Big time. It's getting people a hand up, as the Reverend said. And you know what happened back in the 70s when Governor Schwarzenegger went to Santa Monica College? You know what he paid, Dave, for tuition?
No.
It was actually a fee, $6 for all 15 units. When Governor Pete Wilson went to UC Berkeley Law School, $37 for all 15 units of law school, and they became businessmen. One guy became a bodybuilder, of course, Schwarzenegger, but we won't hold that against him. Still, he became a businessman and a governor, and so did Pete Wilson. Why can't we give our young people today that chance by closing the unfair corporate tax loopholes, bring that money, as the president is saying, to reduce the tuition levels, to provide scholarships fully, not debt, not student loans, but scholarships for people who can compete and work hard. And this is all classes of people. That's the American dream, Dave. And we're losing it unless we do this the right way.
So we've talked about the economy. We've talked about small business, which is really where my heart is. My daddy was a small business owner. My mama was a small business owner. You know, I've been a small business owner. And you do it on a shoestring because that's what you know. We've talked about, education. He didn't seem to really make a big point last night, unless I missed it, about equality for women. And maybe he didn't spend a lot of time on some of these social issues about points like that. Even the analysis I've been seeing. But he's been very progressive, no question. He's been very progressive on gay rights and inclusion and equal rights for all. I agree with you, and I think he was focusing on the nuts and bolts, and in a way, at the start of the second term, Professor, maybe that is where he has to start, laying out, if you will, the blueprint of work, serious work that has to be done if we're going to lay the foundation for some of the long-term legacy items you mentioned. For instance, he talked about some hubs of economic development, mentioning Youngstown as an example. There is another point, obviously, we cannot ignore. I'm going to touch on it briefly, and then we'll take a brief pause, and that is the immigration reform item took a couple of minutes of his time, not much, but listen to what he said about that.
Real reform means stronger border security, and we can build on the progress my administration's already made, putting more boots on the southern border than at any time in our history.
Okay, and I want to take him to task a little on that for this reason. That's been the same mantra of the Republican Party. Nothing can move on immigration until we secure the southern border. And then the president continues on another couple of points that perked and piqued my interest.
And reducing illegal crossings to their lowest levels in 40 years. Real reform means establishing a responsible pathway to earned citizenship, a path that includes passing a background check, paying taxes and a meaningful penalty, learning English, and going to the back of the line behind the folks trying to come here legally.
All of those points are in sync also with the Republican point of view, which is, I think it's realistic. We're going to have to go through some consensus building and compromise. I was a little caught by the fact. KTLK, AM 1150. Right now, we are taking a close-up look at the President's State of the Union address last night, and it was real interesting to see the way one side of the aisle was responding. But on this one topic, when he started talking about gun reform and proposals, there was nobody who could stay glued to their seat because, this has been the issue where America is watching very carefully on how people are responding to a call for a change in this country when it comes to violence and the use of firearms. Let's go to 9.
Overwhelming majorities of Americans who believe in the Second Amendment, have come together around common sense reform, like background checks that will make it harder for criminals to get their hands on a gun. Senators of both parties are working together on tough new laws to prevent anyone from buying guns for resale to criminals. Police chiefs are asking our help to get weapons of war and massive ammunition magazines off our streets because these police chiefs, they're tired of seeing their guys and gals being outgunned. Each of these proposals deserves a vote in Congress. If you want to vote no, that's your choice. But these proposals deserve a vote. One of those we lost was a young girl named Idea Pendleton. Just 3 weeks ago, she was here performing for her country at my inauguration. And a week later, she was shot and killed in a Chicago park after school, just a mile away from my house. Idea's parents, Nate and Cleo, are in this chamber tonight, along with more than 24 Americans whose lives have been torn apart by gun violence. They deserve a vote. Gabby Giffords deserves a vote. The families of Newtown deserve a vote. The families of Aurora deserve a vote. The families of Oak Creek and Tucson and Blacksburg and the countless other communities ripped open by gun violence, they deserve a simple vote.
Okay, Professor, I begin with you. Did he sell his message? And again, America has already said we need some action. I've challenged my own listeners to think about when was the last time we mentioned the 20 kids and the 6 adults. Professor, did he make his point?
He absolutely did. I thought it was the most strong point that he made of the evening.
I would agree.
And he will get the vote on each of these items because he wants to put people on public record in Congress so that the voters can hold them accountable. And it's going to be very interesting to see this happen. How far do you think the opposition will be willing to concede on some of the tightening of restrictions and things like that, the magazines and who can access weapons? How much do you think he will gain from the Republican side? I think he'll gain very little because most of them are in the pocket of the NRA. And, New York State just passed a very strict gun control regime. They have 7 rounds maximum for the magazines over there, and they have banned the semi-automatic assault weapons and universal background checks. All that's included. It's a model for the national law, in my view. So you're saying that executive order may be the way to go if they don't come across with something that he needs? He may have to do that where it's applicable, yes. Wow. This will be something that's going to be, it's going to make a lot of people very upset. All right. Now, Professor, when we get into a comprehensive solution to gun violence in America or violence with the use of firearms, where do you stand, for instance? There's been the idea floated of teachers, educators, packing. And I'm saying, I used to remember packing a food lunch. Now we're talking about packing a weapon? That's ridiculous. There's no way I'm going to pack a weapon, and it's not going to help. You can have a shootout right there in the classroom and kill a bunch of people who are students, innocent students, if the teacher could even use a gun. And most of us don't want to use guns. We want to teach. We want to use our mind. The pen is mightier than the sword. And those guns, man, they've got to be regulated heavily because the Second Amendment says it has to be regulated. And that's the way the courts have to start interpreting that Second Amendment. We've had Art Gray with us here. We've also had a Professor Peter Mathews. I was reading too many things at one time. Peter, thank you so much for being here. Professor from Cypress College, Dr. Art Gray, thank you both.
Thank you.
We've been looking at the reality of how people will be dissecting the State of the Union address.